Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And there are class changes that are coming in on Tuesday. I've got my tier list right now, which was constructed with the current balance in mind. And we're going to be updating it to predict which specializations are going to be rising, which ones are going to be falling, and which ones are going to be staying where they are. So this type of tier list is to give you a good idea if maybe you might want to potentially re-roll to something, or maybe you want to potentially withhold queuing that character for a couple of days to wait for the dust to settle to make sure that that class is actually going to still be in a position to perform at the MMR rating that you're currently at without kind of stumbling and falling down a few pegs, because there are some specializations that got hit pretty hard when it comes to nerfs, and those might be specializations that you should be a bit cautious about queuing up on Tuesday, or maybe use an alt of that specialization that you don't care so much on rating to really feel it out to make sure that they haven't fallen too far, because this is a prediction, and then we will update this tier list as the week progresses and we actually get concrete data from playing it. And as always, if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. So let's talk about the specs here up on the S tier that I've got currently. Windwalker is probably my most contentious one. I do think defensively, it's not really comparable to the rest of the tier. It probably shouldn't have been up here in the first place. So I'm kind of just dropping that one down just immediately, just because I do think its defense is definitely a limiting factor when it comes to PvP at the moment, but its burst damage is carrying it very hard right now. But these were the three, right? These were like the most egregious standout ones, I think, and maybe even potentially Marksmanship Hunter to some extent, but these three for sure. So Frost Mage is receiving 20% nerf on its Ray of Frost damage, but it's also receiving a 4% buff to its other ability, or 3% buff, sorry, to its other abilities. I think this type of change is good for new mages, because new mages that don't know how to get a Ray of Frost are completely useless. They fall over and die at low rating. It's not a good experience for them. It's not a good experience for people who have to heal them. So rebalancing the damage out of Ray of Frost and into more of its kit, I think is a better move for the class as a whole, for the game and the performance of the spec, and hopefully will remove the one-shot potential from it. However, this is a lot of lethality lost, quite a significant amount of lethality lost on Frost Mage that you need to consider. In the hands of the best players, it's still incredibly durable, likely still able to drag matches out into dampening, but I don't know if 3% compensation is enough to adapt for that. Now, do note that lethality is coming down across the board on a lot of specializations, so it's possible that everything is just going to be slower and delayed later into the match, where healing can't immediately recover, especially with some healer buffs that are coming in. So for me, Frost Mage is a very tough one as far as where I want to move it or where I want to slide it. My initial reaction is that I don't really want to move it too much. They didn't touch the defensive capabilities, the invisibilities on it, the blinking out of stuns component of it, but the lethality on Ray is something that shouldn't be ignored. So this is kind of like a cautious one. I'm going to leave it still in S tier because I think its defense was more of an issue than its Ray of Frost damage, but I'm going to leave it here. But this is a cautious one. Be cautious. It may be significantly worse, especially if dot classes can actually get into dampening, because your Ray of Frost isn't lethal anymore. You may lose out in those later game stages. So Frost is like, maybe I should add a tier where it's like this one could have wild swings, high volatility, basically, right? Devourer or Demon Hunter. This one's a strange one because they're nerfing an ability that I'm not sure is having huge impact on the specialization, which is their Shattered Souls. They changed one of their main abilities, which I'm spacing out on the name on. It's the same as the Immolation Aura for Havoc, but it's called something else. And they made it heal in one of the more recent patches to help avenge or devour demon hunters in solo content. But I think it's actually providing a lot of healing, and I don't think that's what this is tied to. I think this is like the souls that you pick up off the ground. I think it's more so this soul immolation or whatever it's called, that's healing them for quite a significant amount, especially against the dot damage. They didn't touch their damage at all, and they still have incredibly high mobility, and it's a spec that can play pretty much zero versatility. The fact that you can play zero versatility in the current meta, I mean, there's something there that's like a core issue. I'm expecting Devour Demon Hunter to like completely take over. I think it's going to be like the main staple specialization, because very few specs are going to keep up with how much damage it's actually capable of doing, and it's still highly durable with high mobility. So Devour Demon Hunter barely a flesh wound, if even a wound at all. I think it's going to be the big conqueror for the rest of the season after these changes. Preservation Evoker, I kind of agreed with them when I read this the first time through, where it's like, it seems like it's a little bit more powerful than the other specializations. And then I queued into a couple last night, and I was playing with one and playing without one, and I was like, no, this is pretty significantly better than others. And the thing that they decided to target, which I've learned what exactly it is basically after you use Tip the Scales, you get this massive swell of stats, which was 30% haste, 30% movement speed, and 30% cooldown recovery rate, which was massive. Like, I saw a Preservation Evoker in one of my Battleground Blitzes. He 1v3'd 3 DPS and killed them as a healer. So, I mean, that sounds a lot more than slightly better. Slightly overperformed. Like, it legit, Preservation Evoker can 1v3 3 DPS specs, especially during this burst. It destroyed them. Like, it's doing as much damage as DPS while also still falling back on as a healer. I think this was a good thing to go after, especially after seeing what happened in that Battleground, given this effect in action and how fast the Chrono Flame casts were and how much damage they were to do and chunk them out. It was like watching a GPI mage in BFA, except it was like a millisecond cast GPI that it was just launching out constantly. But its throughput still incredibly high. I think the Nullifying Shroud could honestly get reduced by a second in terms of duration, or make it purgeable, some type of interaction with it, because at the moment it's just so frustrating to deal with it mechanically. And they did already nerf its duration by a bit. It's like it probably needs to be nerfed even more. And they are addressing core preservation issues in the next patch, which is kind of just like, why are we waiting? Like, so, like some of this, especially related to their flag carrying potential, in Battlegrounds, it's where it's probably the most egregious. I don't really understand why we're waiting to do that instead of just doing it now. Because some of those changes are good that are happening next patch that could easily have been in this update and just been live now. So I'm a bit confused by that. This is better than nothing, but I really don't think it's going to move the needle too much. I think the Nullifying Shrouds and everything else like that, you're probably still A-okay. It's just going to remove your ability to kind of cheesy, potentially 1v3 3 DPS, but I still think you might even be able to. So I don't see a huge amount of movement other than possibly Frost Mage is the biggest fall off of all time. It's possible that you're just like really tanky but can't finish anything and then lose in dampening. It is possible. I'm unwilling to move it at the moment, but that is possible. So Frost Mage is high volatility. Devourer is going to take over. Prez is still going to be very dominant, is my expectation. Marksmanship Hunter, this is the one that I think is going to have a historic fall off. So double tap is the main ability that when they touch this, your spec completely disappears from the game. So they've removed it in the past. Marksmanship disappeared from the game. They add it back and it's really strong. You're back and you're absolutely one-shotting people. Now they're basically removing it, right? Because previously it was 40% effective. It was a 60% nerf on it. Now it's going to be like a, what is that, 64% nerf? No, like 84% nerf on it. So it's only at 16% effectiveness. I could see Marksmanship falling like really hard. Like this is like a big drop. I'm dropping it a lot. Because if it doesn't have the one shot, you basically have nothing else. Like its kit's been completely stripped, that if you can't do that, you're just an NPC archer that stands there and attacks. So this one is like, I feel a lot more confident about shifting this one down because it doesn't have the defense or utility that Frostmage has and can get maybe carried by its partner that does a lot of damage. You don't really have any of that. You're kind of boned. You didn't really get compensated either. Like no buffs to like arcane shot damage or anything like that to help like your sustain. So without this one shot, I don't really see you surviving deep enough. Like you're pretty much only capable of cheese one-shotting with volley and with true shot, which it kind of sucks, meta design wise. So I'm dropping you a lot. I'm dropping you down to B tier. Might even be lower. We'll have to wait and see. Beast Mastery Hunter for sure is still rocking it. There's no changes to it. It's just really good sustain overall. Beast Rat being a low cooldown, it's very powerful. Affliction Warlock, potential here, but I think if Devourer ends up taking over, you may still have some issues. However, there are changes to Death Knight that could indirectly make you better. I don't believe Affliction is getting like anything. It actually is getting something. Okay, I mean 3% is not huge, but I mean I do a lot of damage on my Affliction lock. I just got over 2,800 on it, and 3% is not nothing. Affliction, when it comes to solo content, I'm not so sure about 3v3, but when it comes to solo content, definitely very strong. Might be warranted of replacing Frostmage. We'll see it. I'll update this list as we go through the week. I'm going to leave it here for now, but because it's still really good. Devastation Evoker is also getting a 3% damage buff, so I'm not really going to move it around. It's probably just going to be exactly where it's at. Fire Mage, I actually don't think is deserving of being A+. I think it's pretty weak. It's very cheesy, 100% reliant on meteor damage. At the moment, I've heard some people rumoring about other things, but like I actually don't think it's that insane. I'm dropping it from A plus after playing it recently and seeing it a couple times. Just doesn't seem too crazy. It has its moments, but I just don't see it as being too crazy. It's not receiving any changes. I'm moving this more so just from personal experience with it recently. It seems like it's fallen a bit. Windwalker Monk, we just dropped down to A plus. Phenomenal burst damage, great cooldown pressure, a little bit shaky on the defense side of things that you want to consider. Arms Warrior, I think is getting, it's going to be squishier if you were playing this. I was playing Slayer Warrior before, but I think they definitely needed to be squishier. I've seen like a lot of Ret Warrior teams that just feel completely unbreakable, so I think it was appropriate for them to go after that. I don't think it's going to move too much. I think honestly, just because Frostmage's lethality is coming down, you're probably gonna have a better time. Although Devourer is really tough for you to deal with, so it's a little bit of a weird one there. But I think you're probably gonna be about the same. Red Paladin, they nerfed your damage by 3%. I don't really understand because you guys are doing like pretty low overall damage. It's mostly good just because it's just so much healing now. And they didn't touch that, so it's like, yeah, it kind of sucks you got 3% nerf. I don't really think you're gonna move too much. It's not gonna move it probably at all. You're still very good, like 1v1, especially in Battleground Blitz and things like that. I don't think you're moving too much when it comes to like a PvP standpoint with a 3% nerf like that. Enhancement Shaman, I'm just trying to remember. I don't think you guys got anything. I think it was mostly Restoration Shaman, if I'm not mistaken. I just want to double check. Yeah, Restoration Shaman was all the change. So Enhance, I'm gonna just leave it on A+. I think it's just really strong, especially solo content. Two different types of builds. I think a lot of the top level players are playing Totemic, but you can definitely make Stormbringer work, especially if you're an entry level or mid level player. So it's got a good variance for skill. Just really good throughput still. They didn't really go after its one shot, so you might be one of the best one shots after Ray of Frost reductions, ignoring Devour. And with Marksman getting so hammered on. Subtlety Rogue, no changes, not going to move it. It's just looking really good. Rogue specs are just really underrated at the moment. I feel like I don't see them hardly ever, but they're really underrated, all three of them. I think Subtlety, Assassination, and Outlaw, still very powerful, very potent, and capable of getting a lot done, even despite no changes. I'm not going to move them. They're strong for their own individual reasons. Subtlety is because it can stun so frequently. Assassination is because the burst damage on Kingsbane is just so high. The growth is a little bit of an added benefit, especially if we see any sort of caster shift, especially Affliction or Shadow Priest potentially. Outlaw Rogue is just because it's kind of more beefy, higher sustain, but less stuns than both of them. As once you've used your vanishes, it ends up losing a lot of stun capacity, but it does good damage. It kind of feels more like a warrior, but it's good. Feral Druid, I think you actually got something, which is surprising. You got the 15% auto attack damage. Again, I think your auto attacks are probably less than 5% of your overall, so it's like not really a lot. I think the main reason is just Ferals have really good stuns, decent durability. They're still going to be A+. I don't see this moving. Mistweaver Monk, we don't see anything for you. You still have the Spinning Crane Cook build, so you counter the pet classes, but some of the pet classes like Unholy are getting weaker, so you might honestly feel weaker if they disappear almost entirely. But I think I'm going to... I don't know. I kind of want to move it around. I feel like Prez is actually significantly better than Mistweaver from seeing it a little earlier on and from playing with the Mistweaver last night. I kind of want to move it down a bit. I'm seriously debating it. I think it's really good into Hunters, but Hunter got nerfed. It might fall off the planet. Although Beastmastery will still be really good. And honestly, Survival, it's not looking too bad. I'm going to do this, but it feels weird. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to leave this. I want to move it. My alarm is warning me. It's like, I'm already awake, phone. You need to wake me up. I'm going to leave it, I guess, for now. Disc Priest, I think pretty much everybody's going to go Oracle, because I think Oracle is technically getting stronger after all of these changes are coming through, but Void Weaver is getting much weaker. They nerf your damage, but buff your atonement healing to try and compensate, but it basically puts your healing exactly where it was with significantly less damage. So I think Void Weaver is pretty dead. So if you're a Void Weaver Priest, have your fun now, because I think it's pretty dead. However, like things like Ultimate Penitence, I think is great for Oracle. And then also Oracle is directly getting buffed here with Penance damage, Smite, and Holy Nova damage. Although some of those builds are not doing a lot of damage. I think you're using Penance almost exclusively for healing. But Oracle's still really good. I think it's still going to be A+. It's just pretty much every Void Weaver is going to disappear. Resto Druid is going to be interesting. I don't really understand these Resto Druid changes because I didn't know people were using bear form damage. Even in PvE, I didn't know they were doing that. But then they buffed everything by 15%. So like Star Surge it's probably going to hit for like 130k or something like that. I think it's going to hit decently hard. And then Feral Frenzy is also going to hit really hard. And then just the passive Moonfires as well. If you're playing Keeper of the Grove, like they add up to a lot over a game. This is probably the most significant thing for healers. Like Resto Druid is definitely the best of all of these up here, I think, after this. So I'm kind of shifting it to the left. Maybe we'll put Monk on the bottom of this. Again, it's like left to right, top to bottom. Don't compare range to melee or healers, obviously, to melee and things like that. Keep them in their own category as far as their strength. Yeah, I think that maybe not too much wiggling is going to be going on here. We dropped Fire Mage to A. It honestly might be lower. Shadow Priest, you guys are getting a little bit of a buff. I wish they buffed Shadow or Death more. I wish like the execute ability is actually executed in the game, because it's like, why don't they? But I tested Shadow or Death last night, and it hit for like, I think it hit for 5k damage. So, 50% buff is an extra 2.5k damage on 600,000 health. It doesn't really matter. And Mind Blast also really sucks. Mind Blast just does nothing. I'm thinking about even talenting out of the things that make it instant. It does such a pathetically low amount of damage. I don't even think it's worth the global. There's just a lot of abilities in its kit that just don't even feel like they do anything or even worth pressing or taking talents for at the moment. The 4% is nice overall. It's definitely not nothing. I think the other thing too is if now marksmans can't one-shot you, it's basically only Windwalkers and kind of Devour a little bit. You might struggle with Enhanced and Warrior still. I think Enhanced and Warrior will still have some high representation. It's not nothing. If you can stay alive to deep enough dampening, you can kind of make it work, but a lot of its kit just feels not very good. And then this is just not going to really do anything because Shadow or Death just doesn't do any damage to Shadow. It's really just this, the 4% overall. Do I think it's enough to jump it up a tier? I don't think so. Its lethality, I think, is too low at the moment. Elemental Shaman, not receiving any changes. I think A tier is still the right spot for it. I still think it's a bit on the squishier side of things compared to some other ranged. Its threat is still just only in Ascendance. Again, they're making a lot of changes to it in the patch after this season. If they applied those changes right now, I think it would make it pretty bad, especially if other classes still retain their one-shots like Windwalker and Devourer. But it's kind of dampening dependent. Has decent disruption. Like, I think it's probably still only on A is where I want to leave it. Survival, I think, honestly, Survival's one-shot might be one of the best one-shots in the game now. Boomstick and Takedown, and then the Sentinel ability after you activate Takedown. It honestly might be one of the strongest one-shots. But it doesn't really have anything outside of that. So it's a spec that's in the category where it's all cooldown damage and nothing else. I think it received like a 3% damage buff. I'm pretty sure. Was it for PvE? Was it for PvP? I can't remember. Or was it for the game as a whole? Did it not get anything? I could have sworn it did. Yeah, I got 3%. I don't think it's going to do too much. Again, it's like its damage gap between its cooldowns and it's not cooldowns. 3% is not going to compensate for that. It's 3% honestly is just going to make its one-shot slightly better. And not really compensate for the in-between. Fury Warrior is honestly kind of underrated, I swear. Like, Fury Warrior is actually really good. I don't even really want to leave it on A. I actually think it's really good. Am I taking a big leap here by doing this? Like putting it up with arms? I swear it's deserving at least of being up here on the A plus tier. I actually think Fury Warrior is like crazy. Havoc Demon Hunter, this guy is going to get crazy good. I might have had it honestly underrated. Its defense is going down a little bit, but it's getting more damage. It was already doing a lot of damage. So I think that Havoc is probably going to be doing really well here. It's also, I think, just because rogues have pretty much like disappeared for whatever reason, even though I swear they're all really good. So I have a lot of melee. The melee balance is probably the best of anything in the game right now. Like, they're just all feeling decently competitive with each other. But I'm jumping Havoc up for this tier, the purposes of this tier list. Unholy DK, I think is probably, again, it's tough because some of the changes like this one to Soul Reaper are just going to do nothing because Soul Reaper doesn't do any damage anyways. Soul Reaper is good because of the modifications it does to your other abilities. So nerfing an ability that already did nothing is going to do nothing. Putrefy is definitely significant. It's one of your main burst abilities. And then the Dread Plague increase is nice. So it's tough to say where it's going to end. It's just going to, I think it's going to lose a little bit of its edge on Putrefy. Soul Reaper is still probably going to be pretty important burst cooldown because they didn't nerf the modifier portion of it. They just nerfed its direct damage, I assume, based on reading the way that this is out. I like what they're trying to do with it. I don't think they hit this on the right stuff to be able to actually accomplish that. Maybe I'm wrong. Definitely open to being wrong. But I think Unholy might fall a bit. I'm dropping Unholy down. We're dropping Unholy down a tiny bit. Little tiny bit. I think Frost DK will be better. I think if you're an Unholy DK, you're probably playing Frost on Tuesday. You didn't touch it, and you're still absolute god one shot, right? And honestly, you synergize pretty well with like Devour. You synergize pretty well with Havoc. A lot of these classes are actually getting better. Holy Priest, I should have had honestly lower than this. I think Holy Priest was the worst healer. I had it as like third to worst, but I actually think it was the worst healer. It's getting 20% on Serenity. I don't think it's getting a 4% buff on top of that, though. I think it's just your main burst heals are getting buffed. So your immediate like emergency recovery is going to be a lot stronger. Mostly the Serenity. I'm not sure. The Sanctifying Healing is kind of minor, but the Serenity is pretty big. I still think you might run into mana issues in some games. I think it's a really good beginner healer. Is it enough? Maybe it's enough for me to just leave it here on A tier. It probably is, honestly. Maybe I drop it lower than Shaman. It's pretty close, though. I think I'd drop it lower than Shaman, but it's pretty close. Restoration Shaman, they're buffing Farseer. They didn't want to give you this 4% buff, but they buffed Farseer. Now, I don't know the contributions of these abilities independently. Now, I do know that Hydro Bubble in the past was very strong. That's why they had to add a PP nerf to it. So it's possible that Resto Shaman ends up getting really far ahead here with Farseer. I think their attempts, what they're trying to do is make Farseer equal to Totemic. And if that's the case, then you're not really that great if they actually hit that mark. But if they overshoot it, you could end up being really good. They buffed Ancestors and a little bit of extra healing for the Maelstrom as well. Resto Shaman's hard. I feel like this could have the highest shift. So I'm going to leave it in the middle. High volatility on Resto Shaman, high volatility on Marksman, high volatility on Holy DK for sure. Possible high volatility on Frost Mage. So Resto Shaman, I think, could see the most movement depending on how those changes land. And this is assuming they land as intended. Sometimes changes come in and they're bugged, and then they end up being way stronger or way weaker than intended. So take that into account as well. Looking at the B tier, we got Balance Druid, 4% damage buff. It's like the bet. I think you're honestly probably better than Destro just because you don't have to cast all your damage at least. And you're very high mobile. Like I don't really want to move you though. I feel like this, even with 4% damage, I don't really want to move it. I swear it's not that great. Destro Lock Incinerate buff is nice, but still pretty stationary. Honestly, am I going to drop Marksman even lower? This is crazy, bro. You're going from all the way up here. I actually think I'm going to do that. Destro, I think I'm not going to move, even with the Incinerate buff. It's honestly it's like a little bit of a tweak away from being the best thing in the game, but that little tweak matters a lot. Arcane Mage, I don't think is this bad. I think Arcane Mage, especially after the buff, I think A is probably more than fair for it. It has a lot of burst damage. The 4% is definitely going to be felt by that. Augmentation, 8% buff is better than nothing, but again, its damage was pretty low next to other specs outside of its opener with its burst. And Ebonmite is still going to fall off when you get CC'd is its main issue, and that's not been addressed, so I'm probably just going to leave it here on B. Holy Paladin, I don't think received anything. I had it as the weakest healer. I think it's definitely noticeable, especially when you don't have a Prez or something when you're playing a Pally. I think I'm going to leave it as the weakest healer at the moment. All the tank specs, again, some of them are getting nerfed, like Guardian and Prot, so they're all kind of sort of viable in BG Blitz, to be fair. Like if you're running them to do BG Blitz, you're pretty much okay to go on any of them in my mind. Solo Shuffle, expect to be like 500 rating lower than any other spec in the game. That's any other role in the game, just because your finishing power is so low and people will probably troll you because they don't want to play with you as a tank. Demonology, some of the buffs, again, it's on abilities that don't really do anything, like the Shadow Bolt. The Shadow Bolt is like, the fact that they pick 200% is a lot better than picking something like 20 because it does such little damage, but it's still very small. Demon Bolt might be felt a bit. Again, these are the right abilities, right direction. Just don't know if the specifics are enough to actually move the needle. And I feel like it was pretty weak. I feel more comfortable leaving it on the bottom still. It's not that it's untenable. You can play it, but it's not. Its damage definitely is noticeably lower than others. So not a huge amount of movement, honestly, after these, outside of like a couple of outliers, right? Like Unholy, potentially Marksman, I think for sure, potentially Frost, maybe Resto Shaman. I do think Devourer is probably going to steal the show on Tuesday, so it's time walking. I'm leveling my Demon Hunter on Tuesday, and I'm going to be sending it out there and trying to devour some souls with that one. Moving into it, we'll have to see. Could be wrong. This is just, again, it's a prediction where I'm kind of vibing on the specs currently, and then trying to see where they would move, how their kits are placed, how the meta is looking, and how their matchups look based on popularity of other specs. Melee DPS is one where it feels like you can almost kind of go no wrong as far as the selection. Ranged has a little bit more of a higher downside, whether it's durability or damage output, I think in most regards. And some of these guys are still, I think these guys are still going to be outliers. I could be wrong again, but I'm willing to bet it. Frost could have some volatility, could move down quite significantly. But that's it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed this update, this prediction, this discussion. It's helped you decide what you're going to do on Tuesday. If you're going to make an alt for some of these high volatility specs, or re-roll to something that might be really strong, to try and have some fun before the season is over. Other than that, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.